Hello, my dear students. Today we are going to start a lesson titled Long Walk to Freedom. This extract from Nelson Mandela's autobiography talks about the inauguration day, ceremonies that took place then, and also about Mandela's feelings on that particular day. But the question is, who is Mandela? Reading this story without actually knowing about South Africa's history and about this great man called Mandela would be futile. Hence, let me give you a clearer picture of who he really was and how he managed to bring about the change that South Africans had well deserved. We also need to get a clearer version of what apartheid was in reality.
Apartheid really began in 1948, but separating black Africans from the white minority had long been a policy aim. Laws made white people officially superior, and the large black majority faced discrimination in every aspect of their lives. Living, doing business or owning land in white areas was banned. There were separate public facilities, transport and schools. Interracial marriage was banned. Many had no right to citizenship and were regarded as aliens in major cities. Instead, they were made citizens of Bantustans, homelands scattered throughout South Africa.
In 1962, a vicious crackdown by the apartheid state was unleashed, and Mandela was caught up in the regime's wide net. As he sat in prison, his ANC colleagues were also rounded up at a farm in an area outside of Johannesburg called Rivonia and jailed. In 1963, during what came to be called the Rivonia trial, the government tried and convicted Mandela and 7 of the top command of the ANC on charges of sabotage aimed at fomenting violent revolution, a capital offense. In June 1964, the 8 were sentenced to life in prison. In 1985, I made my first trip to the land of Mandela's birth to find out what was driving the country's people, black and white, and also to determine how much of Mandela's spirit was still alive.
What are you singing about? Tell me, what is this about? What is the song about? Mandela and Oliver Tambo.
We want Mandela to be released from jail.
Really?
And those who are in exile to come back here in South Africa.
There's one man we all respect and we take him high. We call him our father. None other than Nelson Mandela.
Okay, children, now we know what apartheid regime looked like, how the Africans and Mandela fought about, and how Mandela, along with his supporters, got imprisoned for life. We also saw how much the people loved and revered him. But the question still is, who was Mandela in reality, and what did he actually do? Let us watch another video to understand more.
What exactly did he do to fight for a more just and free world? On July 18, 1918, when Mandela was born, his father gave him the name Holy Shasha, which means something like troublemaker. A coincidence or a sign of things to come? Mandela grew up in a traditional Xhosa clan before going to an English-speaking boarding school. That was where he first got the name Nelson. At law school, he fought actively against the South African system of racial segregation known as apartheid, which was even written into the law. Mandela joined the ANC, a party that advocated for black Africans' rights. Although Mandela initially believed in peaceful protest, he changed his mind in favor of armed resistance. After the ANC was banned, Mandela's struggle went underground. But Mandela couldn't hide forever. In 1962, he was arrested and sentenced to life in prison as a terrorist. Although some Western politicians supported his imprisonment, more and more people around the world advocated for his release. In 1990, South Africa's new president, Frederick de Klerk, gave in and set the troublemaker free. 4 years later, Nelson Mandela ran for office in the country's first democratic election and was voted in as South Africa's very first black president. Considering himself the president of all South Africans, he united the country that had been divided along racial lines. One of the ways Mandela did this was through sports, such as rugby, which the black population rejected as a sport of apartheid. When South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup and won the final, Mandela gave the team captain a congratulatory hug in front of millions of viewers, an enormous gesture of reconciliation. Whether through his efforts for the Soccer World Cup or his foundation against AIDS, even after leaving politics, Mandela remained dedicated to his country. To commemorate his tireless struggle, in 2009, an International Day of Remembrance was created in his name on July 18th. Even after his death, Mandela's dedication to peace and reconciliation continues to bear fruit in South Africa and worldwide.
Hello children, I'm sure the videos must have helped you all understand Mandela and his life better. Now I've posted some questions for you all to answer on your own understanding. It's just one word or maybe a sentence, but I need you all to do it on your own, please. Let me now give you a glimpse of 10th May 1994. The glorious day when international leaders from world over had come to witness the celebration of victory of South Africa's freedom and of humankind through this video.
It's taken a long time, decades of suffering and sacrifice. But today, at the seat of government so long, the bastion of white rule, the new South Africa was finally born, and the world came to celebrate. Leaders from 90 countries, representatives from more than 50 others, royalty from Britain, the first time in 50 years, also the Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd. Vice President Al Gore came with President Clinton's wife Hillary. Also the United Nations Chief Boutros Ghali to witness a rare success on the world stage. Never on the African continent has there been such a gathering of international leaders for the inauguration of a president. But then, this is no ordinary president, no ordinary man. Mr. Mandela arrived accompanied by his eldest daughter, but before he took the oath of office, F.W. de Klerk, the former president, who began the move to black rule, was sworn in as a deputy. Then Nelson Mandela uttered the words that will change South Africa forever.
I, Nelson Mandela, do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa. So help me God. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another.
And from the skies above, a colourful salute on a momentous day for South Africa. Mark Austin, ITN, Pretoria.
Now children, let's come back to the text. Here Mandela speaks about the program. Now as I do this, I will be playing the national anthem of South Africa so that you can get the feel of it. So in the text, Mandela speaks about the program. He speaks about the spectacular display of South African jets, helicopters and troop carriers. He talks about military's loyalty to democracy. He talks about how highest generals of South African Defence Force and police saluted him and pledged their loyalty. He remembers how not so many years ago they would have not saluted but arrested him. The final exhibition was a chevron of Impala jets that left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue and gold of the South African flag. The two national anthems were sung. He then remembers history and how the white-skinned people of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the black-skinned people of their own land. The structure created was the most inhuman one. And how now in the last decade of the 20th century that system has been overturned forever and replaced by one that is recognized by freedom for all irrespective of their color of skin. He then talks about the courage and sacrifice of those brave men and women who fought and died for this day. He reminds us about apartheid and how it has created a deep, everlasting wound in the hearts of the people. But when thought about it in a positive way, he also says that it was because of apartheid that produced great men of extraordinary courage, wisdom and generosity, that perhaps their like may never be known again. He then refers to the rich gems and minerals that his country possesses, but again insists that the greatest wealth that he has known is its people, more valuable than the purest of diamonds. He talks about courage and how he learned about it from these great men and women who risked their life for their country. He beautifully states that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. He says that since no person is born hating another, they have to be taught to love since love comes naturally. He remembers how while he was in prison, he had seen a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards. Even if it was only for a second, it was enough to assure him and keep him going. He then talks about obligations of a man towards family, friends, society, and such obligations were stripped of a colored man. He says that he was not born with a hunger to be free, but rather he was born free. However, the freedom he enjoyed as a child was snatched away from him once he became young and big enough to understand life. It was a gradual process of realizing that not only was he not free, but so were his brothers and sisters who looked like him. That is when he joined African National Congress and started striving for the freedom of his people. That hunger drove him to becoming a bold man and a law-abiding citizen into a criminal. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any of his people meant chains on him and vice versa. He was of the opinion that both the oppressor and oppressed must be liberated. The oppressor ought to be liberated from hatred, prejudice, and narrow-mindedness. He personally was of the belief that he would be truly free only if he would be able to grant the oppressor the freedom too. He is truly a man who is universally revered as an icon of leadership and humanity. He has worked tirelessly to entrench the ideals he has so long stood for.